everybody, it's Tina Desiree Berg. I wanted to go live here informally with you for a few minutes to update you on the Robert Fuller situation. If you have not been keeping abreast of the Robert Fuller situation, I'll give you some background. Robert Fuller is the young Black gentleman that was found hanging from a tree in Palmdale, California a couple of days ago. It appears to be a lynching. Initially, the sheriff's department came out and said that it was a suicide. Then they walked that back and said they should have said it was a preliminary suicide, but they haven't really done much of an investigation. The autopsy hasn't been completed yet. And it seems to be a very fishy situation given that a week earlier, there was also another lynching in Victorville, which is about a half hour north of where Palmdale is. That was Malcolm Hirsch, who was found hanging from a tree outside of a library. So it's very strange that all of a sudden we have these two lynchings back to back within a period of a week when California doesn't really have a history of that. I'm sure there's been some lynchings in the state of California, but our racism has tended to taken a different form. This is not something that we've seen before, and it seems very strange that if these two gentlemen were going to commit suicide, this would be the method they would choose. It just doesn't make sense. So let me play you a clip of part of the presser that the Sheriff's Department gave when this first happened a couple days ago, and you'll hear some of the protesters already pushing back on the claims that they're making.
Let them spew it out.
So why would you put out a public statement saying that it was possible suicide if you don't have all the answers?
Because it's not a murder. Who made that assumption?
You guys remember what the first coroner said about George Floyd? Remember what they said about George Floyd, the first coroner? We need to get another coroner.
Yes.
We need another coroner.
Let's go.
Independent autopsy.
Autopsy report says she had no injuries when she was shot 8 times by the police and murdered in her own home.
Amen.
And you guys mishandle every big media case. We have no faith in you after this whole Gabriel thing just happened, and this is now. This fight for the Black boy, y'all so quick to sweep it under the rug. You don't have the city's faith at all. And I know y'all don't seem surprised or shocked by it, but we need complete transparency with this.
There's no meeting with the devil. There's no meeting.
To you guys. That way it's non-biased. That's what we're looking for.
It's not okay.
Why are we signing petitions to fucking make lynching illegal? And then this happens right away. Why is that going around everywhere?
Right.
And why are we saying it's a suicide before we're trying to pass a petition?
And he wasn't killed in
Come
the
on.
backyard.
Can you humor
Why
us?
was it right here? Why was it right here in public, in front of City Hall, next to a church, in front of a library? Why was it like that? Who would do that? No Black man would hang himself in public like that. And I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that.
Let them read the report.
So you could hear some of the pushback, and I think it's valid. I agree with what these protesters were saying. It just doesn't add up. And another thing that was Lieutenant Brandon Dean, another thing that the city of Palmdale was claiming was that it was possibly related to mental health issues. And part of their statement even mentioned COVID-19 as one of the mitigating factors as to why somebody might commit suicide in this way, which is absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Now, they've also gone on to claim that there are no cameras so that none of this was caught on video. Well, it might be the case that there's no cameras in City Hall. I did take a walk around the building and I didn't really see any cameras, but that seems very strange to me that in 2020, any sort of a city government building wouldn't have cameras. I mean, they even have them out on the street. They monitor us everywhere we go at this point. So that just seems incredibly ridiculous. But even if we grant that, even that if that ends up to be true, there are definitely cameras across the street at the commercial area. So across the street, there's a retailer, there's a photo studio, and there's also an apartment building. So one of the facilities, the retail outlet, that had a protester there yesterday that we did interview, and she mentioned that the sheriff's department never asked her for her video, right? So it seems odd to me that they didn't right off the bat go over there and say, do any of you folks have video? So we can maybe look at it and see who was in the park that night. That didn't happen. And unfortunately, these devices re-record over the old footage. So that footage has been lost. It was re-recorded over. And I'm hoping, though, that the other The other facilities might still have some video. I'm going to go knock on some doors tomorrow and see what we can find out. So the other side of that is they're saying where the City Hall building is, there's a street and then an empty field, which is true. And it seems unlikely that whoever did this would come in from that side because the building completely extends all the way down the street. And even if that was the case, those cameras across the street are I would say 150 yards away from where the tree is where he was found. So they're close enough where they would have had to have captured something. Whoever was walking around, pulling into the parking lot, on the sidewalk there, in the first area of the grassy knoll of the park. It doesn't make sense that would be the case. Something was caught on video, I guarantee it. But that's what they're claiming. So I think another important part of the conversation is the history of white supremacy, not only in the Palmdale area, Lancaster area. There's been a lot of neo-Nazi groups that have had a stronghold there, but also within the sheriff's department. I was able to speak with an LAPD officer yesterday who was there as a protester, not as a police officer, off the camera. And one of the things that he mentioned to me was that Paul Tanaka, who was our undersheriff for many years, who is actually now serving time, was a member of a group called the Linwood Vikings, who are a white supremacist group. And it was a group of sheriffs that are involved in this, and they're not the only one. And he was able to show me photos of officers that had neo-Nazi tattoos on their ankles and some other things. So clearly this is a problem. He also mentioned to me various stories that he's experienced firsthand as an officer, as an African-American officer, the racism that he has experienced at the hands of his brethren, that he's also witnessed. So, and he says that he's been pretty outspoken with it and has been targeted for that reason, which is unfortunate, but not surprising, right? So I wanted to also play some video of you of the actual protest itself. We heard from the best friend who gave this really heartfelt speech. I'm going to play that clip for you now.
His best friend speaking on his behalf. Listen to this young woman. Listen to this sister right now.
I gotta fucking swap out my film.
Hi everybody. I just want to thank everybody for coming out, because for those who knew Robert and for those who didn't know Robert, Robert was the sweetest person in the world, and he would have never hung himself. Not in no city hall, not in no city hall, not in no tree.
Nowhere.
And I really want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting him. Not just supporting him, supporting everybody. Because it's not just Robert. It's everyone out here. Everybody's fighting for their lives. And it just happened to be Robert's life taken in that tree. And I'm holding the tears back. Robert would have wanted me to be strong. He didn't like the crybaby. He didn't like it. And y'all don't understand that seeing everybody's face here is giving me so much relief to understand that everybody feels the way I'm feeling, that they hung him in a tree, that he's gone. My best friend is not going to get to have children. My best friend is not going to get married. I'm never going to see him smile again. I'm never going to hear his laugh. I'm not going to be able to watch Dragon Ball Z with him anymore. I'm not going to be able to do a lot, and I'm thankful for everyone here to come and support, and I hope that y'all here every day like I'm going to be. Thank you so much.
Say his name! Say his name! Say his name!
I also spoke with another protester that told me he saw a Peckerwood there in the park yesterday. Now, the Peckerwoods are also a neo-Nazi group that have been active in the area of Palmdale. The original chapter, I believe, was in the San Fernando Valley. At least they were present there in the San Fernando Valley in the late 80s, early 90s. They've always been neo-Nazis. They've also been quite violent and convicted of hate crimes. There are a lot of Peckerwoods that are in the prison system, and I think it needs to be mentioned that the sheriff's department, they're the group that oversees the prison system, right? So they're the ones that are present there as law enforcement in the prison system. So there might be a relation, but who knows? The protester did mention that he saw a Peckerwood. The guy had a T-shirt on that had the Peckerwood emblem. He had some neo-Nazi tattoos. He'd been sitting on a park bench observing the protest from a distance, not participating in it, obviously. But he was discovered, and sort of like people started saying stuff to him, and he just ended up leaving. This is at least what I was told. I didn't witness this firsthand. but that was the account I was given. So that's also seems to be a part of the puzzle perhaps. We'll see. So I wanted to talk about the more about the protest in the sense that it stayed pretty peaceful. The BLM folks wanted it to stay peaceful. They kept saying that over and over again. But we had sheriffs that were coming in from outside of the Palmdale area. So throughout the day, their fraction was a smaller number that just grew. So you had folks coming in from Valencia, from Santa Clarita, from San Gabriel Valley, some of these other areas that are, more towards LA, because Palmdale is about an hour north of Los Angeles. So by the afternoon, there was a bit of a standoff in the street. Let me play you some of that video.
Can't give them any excuse. So we stay here and we stay peaceful. But if you're here, realize that they are surrounding us on all sides. And they are ready to take action the moment one of us step out of line. So we hold peace. No justice, no peace. But we're going to be peaceful today. We're not giving them an excuse. Remember why we're here. We're here because a young man was lynched in that tree over there. And in honor of Robert Fuller, in honor of his family, we're not going to let a single one of these cops fire a bullet today. Right? Yeah! You're not going to let a single one of these cops put us in handcuffs today. Right? Yeah! We don't owe them a fucking thing. We don't even owe them our attention. Turn your attention away from them and look at the people around you.
Turn your backs on them.
Turn your backs on the police. Turn your backs on the police.
Just like they're turning backs on
Turn your
us.
backs on the police. Why do they deserve a moment of our attention? They've taken everything from us. They've taken our lives. They don't deserve the dignity of our attention. We're here for one reason. Say his name. Say his name. Say his name. Say his name. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
So that was the protest from the back side. Let me show you a little bit of the footage we shot from more of the front side where you can see the sheriffs had lined up and blocked off the street. And this is where you could see that they had tear gas launchers. They had rubber bullet grenade launchers. One of them had a live ammunition gun. And let me show you that.
Who's blocking traffic? This is damn so. Just like y'all want to shoot at me, I want to shoot at y'all.
I command you in the name of the people of Phoenix, California.
We are the people of California.
We are the people of California. We are the people of California. We are the people of California. We are the people.
Fist up.
Why are you right here? 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 Fucking press your hand in hand.
Real KKK in this little green right here. Y'all all want the same. Y'all all want the white racist ass motherfucker.
I got the wrong helmet on. You forgot your Klan hoodie.
All bunch of fucking white supremacist ass, pussy ass pig. I don't see not a goddamn black person in no goddamn uniform. Hey, y'all let the town. Resources, don't you think?
Robert Fuller! Robert Fuller! Robert Fuller! Robert Fuller! Robert Fuller!
Alright, y'all, we're going to stay where we are because I gave her my word. So, me giving her my word, I'm going to be a woman of my word. I'm a black woman of my word.
What about their fucking word?
Fuck you. We on the sidewalk. You guys can wait peacefully. Goodbye.
So I know you could hear the whirring of the helicopter above us, but you probably couldn't make out what that sheriff was saying through his bullhorn. Basically what he was saying was he was getting ready to make arrests under a certain section of the penal code in the name of the people of the state of California, which is why you heard all the protesters pushing back with "We are California, we are the people of California," which is true. I believe the penal code he was referencing was about blocking the street. Not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Another thing we need to mention is you heard one of the protesters behind me making the case for the fact that none of the officers there were African American. They were all white, which is true. And I think that this is also part of the problem. The sheriff's department has been tasked with overseeing communities that are mainly or have been historically mainly immigrant or Black communities, Latino communities. So now you have an outside law enforcement agency, right? None of these folks live in the community, and they come there to do the policing. So this also adds to the problem, and I think it's something that needs to be looked at as well. I think we need to talk a little bit about Alex Villanueva, who is our current sheriff. Alex is the first Democrat that we've had in that position in 100 years. He ran not only as a Democrat, but he ran as a progressive. And in fact, I interviewed Alex when he was running for office. And he spoke very frankly with me about the problems with racism in the sheriff's department. This is a guy that ran not only on reforming that racism and doing something about the things we're discussing here, but also wanted to get rid of ICE. He was very vocal about that. So I don't know why he doesn't seem to be making any changes, though, and I don't know why that is. I did reach out to him for comment. I'll keep you folks updated if he responds and let you know what he says. So tomorrow I'm going to head up to Victorville and see what I can find there. I'm going to see if I can talk to some of these businesses across the street and see if they have anything. And we'll have to wait to see what happens with the autopsy that hasn't been released yet. But there's definitely more news to come out of this. I think the whole thing's very fishy. I think the idea that both of these situations are suicide just doesn't add up. And I think that California needs to deal with our racist law enforcement and our racism in the state. I know folks outside of California they look at California and they say, oh, it's a blue state, right? It's progressive. But we have a long history of racism in the state. Yes, we have a long history of having progressive politics, but that has gone on side by side with the racism. Think of the fact that Daily Stormer was birthed out of Santa Monica, for example. So we do have a history of neo-Nazism here, and it's never really been dealt with. And I think it's partially coming to head with the fact that it's been ingrained into our law enforcement for many decades now and has not been dealt with. So is this a cover-up of the law enforcement? That remains to be seen. Is it just white supremacists acting as a group, responding to the BLM protests, responding to whatever else civil unrest is going on currently? Maybe. I think those things could both be true. I think they could be related, but I find it very strange that they would say it's suicide, because I don't see that. The probability of that being the case is very low as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, we will keep you posted. We'll be uploading more video shortly of the protests yesterday and some of the interviews we've done. I'm hoping also to speak with the LAPD officer again that I spoke with yesterday to get more information on the two white supremacist groups that have been involved in this area, the Linwood Vikings, the Peckerwoods, and also a handful of other inner sheriff department white supremacist groups, because apparently they have many of them, and they're sometimes localized to one station. And the way that this has been treated in the past has been like, oh, it's just this sort of brotherhood thing, right? It's not really about being neo-Nazis or something, but that's not the case, especially if they have tattoos on their ankles that are neo-Nazi symbols. And this LAPD officer showed me some photos of that. So obviously none of this is conspiracy theory. It's very much real. And I'm hoping that these protesters keep the pressure on, because I think what they're doing now is necessary, and I think it is actually helping to force change in the country. So anyway, driving up to Victorville tomorrow, we're going to ask some more questions around here, and we will keep you posted. Thanks for listening.